The higher the calling, the greater the target. If you've ever felt a deep sense of purpose burning inside you, a call to bring light, truth, healing, you're not imagining it. There is something sacred on your life. But with that calling comes pressure. Invisible, spiritual pressure. You may think your struggles with lust mean you're weaker than others. But what if the opposite is true? What if you're targeted because you're dangerous? Lust isn't just about physical temptation. For those who are chosen, it's a strategy, a precise spiritual assault designed to distract, discourage, and disable you from walking fully in your purpose. The enemy doesn't waste ammunition on those who pose no threat. But someone with divine calling, they become a priority. And the attack doesn't come in obvious ways. It's subtle. It enters through isolation, stress, spiritual fatigue. It disguises itself as comfort, as beauty, as something natural. And soon, what started as a momentary thought becomes a pattern. And with the pattern comes guilt. And with guilt comes silence, shame, distance. This is why so many chosen ones battle lust in secret. Not because they're impure, but because the enemy is clever and persistent. He doesn't just want to make you fall, he wants to make you question your value, to make you feel disqualified, to keep you in hiding. But here's what the enemy hates. Every time you rise again, every time you run back to God instead of away, your purpose strengthens. Your heart becomes more real, and heaven sees your fight even when no one else does. You are not weak. You are not fake. You are a warrior under pressure, and your story is far from over. Sensitivity to the Spirit comes with spiritual vulnerability. Chosen ones often carry a sensitivity that others don't fully understand. You feel more. You notice what others miss. You're tuned in to the spiritual atmosphere of a room, to the unspoken emotions in a person's words, to the invisible weight of moments. That sensitivity is a gift, but it also comes with risk. When you're spiritually open, you're also spiritually exposed. You hear God in silence, but you also sense darkness before it shows its face, and lust doesn't always show up with horns and danger signs. Sometimes it feels gentle, soft, even comforting, not because it's good, but because it mimics intimacy. It imitates connection. It enters the same emotional space where divine love once lived, but without the healing power. And if you're emotionally tired, unguarded, or simply craving closeness, that spiritual sensitivity can be hijacked. Lust slides into that hunger and promises relief, validation, touch, but gives only a moment of escape and a trail of regret. It doesn't mean you're impure. It means your spirit is alive. That same spiritual gift that opens you to God's presence also makes you sensitive to other forces. But here's the truth. If you can sense the counterfeit, you can also discern the real. The same deep awareness that leaves you vulnerable is the key to your discernment and your victory. You can feel the shift before the fall and call on God in that moment. You're not defective because you're tempted. You're sensitive because you were made to respond to the Spirit. But you're not meant to navigate that gift alone. Let God teach you to guard it. Let Him help you redirect the hunger, not suppress it, not deny it, but lead it home to Him. Isolation creates openings for temptation. One of the most consistent realities for chosen people is solitude. Not necessarily loneliness in the physical sense. You might be surrounded by people, but a deeper kind of separation, a spiritual kind, a sense that your path is different, that others don't quite get you, that even your closest relationships feel distant when it comes to your inner world. This isolation isn't always a punishment. Sometimes it's God's way of preparing you, setting you apart for something greater. But the enemy also sees it and exploits it. In seasons of isolation, when no one's checking in, when you're not being seen, not being known, lust comes knocking, not loudly. It slips in as a whisper. You deserve to feel something. No one else is here for you. Just this once won't matter. And if your soul is aching for connection, even a false one can seem comforting. Lust, in these moments, doesn't feel like rebellion. It feels like relief, like someone finally noticing you, like warmth in the cold. But that's the trap. It offers touch, but not tenderness. It offers pleasure, but not peace. It gives escape, not healing. And after it's gone, it leaves you emptier than before. Many chosen ones don't talk about this. They're leaders, intercessors, voices of encouragement. They're the ones others run to for support, but rarely have someone to run to themselves. And that silence becomes the soil where secret struggles grow. But here's the truth. You're not weak for needing connection. You were created for it. But lust is a distorted version of what your soul actually longs for, divine intimacy. You don't need to be ashamed of your hunger, just bring it to the right source. Lust doesn't just tempt the body, it attacks the soul. When you think of lust, it's easy to picture something surface level, a fleeting thought, an image, a moment of desire. But for chosen ones, lust isn't just a physical urge, it's a spiritual weapon. It's aimed not just at your flesh, but at the deepest parts of who you are, because if the enemy can't take away your calling, he'll try to corrupt your confidence. Every time you fall into lust, it's not just about what happened, it's what follows, the shame, the silence, the questioning, am I even worthy of being used by God? That's the true damage, the distortion of your identity, not the act itself, but what it tells you about yourself afterward. You begin to doubt your own anointing. You pull back from prayer. You avoid spiritual responsibility. You let guilt speak louder than grace. This is exactly the enemy's plan, because a chosen one who still sins but keeps running to God is dangerous. But a chosen one who gives in, then hides, then self-destructs, that's a victory for darkness. Lust isn't just about desire. It's about disconnection. It separates you from your spiritual clarity. It breaks your flow. You stop feeling like a vessel, you start feeling like a fraud, and then, instead of rising up in strength, you sink into silence and secrecy. But listen, your fall doesn't define you. What defines you is your return. God never expected perfection, He expected surrender. And when you fall, He doesn't ask for distance, He invites you closer. Why? Because He already paid for it. And He knows how to heal not just the wound, but the lie the wound tries to plant inside you. Your soul matters more than your stumble, and your destiny is still intact. Old wounds leave open doors. For many chosen ones, the battle with lust isn't just about desire. It's about pain, unhealed pain, wounds from the past, rejection, abandonment, words spoken in childhood that still echo in your mind, relationships that broke you, touch that was taken from you instead of given in love. These experiences leave deep scars, and when those scars aren't healed by truth, they become entry points for lies. Lust often sneaks in wearing the disguise of comfort. It doesn't always approach you with aggression. It comes quietly, like a balm for the ache you've carried so long that you've stopped even noticing it. When your heart is bleeding and no one sees it, lust says, I'll make you feel something again. But it never heals. It only numbs, temporarily, and when the feeling fades, the pain is still there, only now it's layered with shame and guilt too. This is how the cycle begins. You hurt, you reach for relief, you fall, you feel unworthy, you isolate, and the next time you're in pain, you reach again. It's not that you're addicted to lust, you're addicted to escape, to forgetting the ache for just a few moments. But there is another way. God doesn't just want you to resist temptation. He wants to heal the place where it takes root. He wants to go to the memory, the trauma, the heartbreak, not to expose you, but to comfort you, not to judge you, but to cleanse the pain so the desire for false comfort loses its grip. Lust is powerful, but unhealed pain is what gives it power. When the pain is healed, the cravings begin to shift. What once drew you into isolation now begins to push you toward connection with God, with truth, with wholeness, and you'll find that what you were searching for in fantasy was actually a cry for intimacy, the kind that only your Father can truly satisfy. So don't just fight the urge, let Him heal the wound. Some battles are fought in silence. One of the enemy's greatest tactics isn't just temptation, it's isolation through shame, and few battles isolate like the struggle with lust. Because even among believers, it's one of the most difficult topics to talk about, especially for the chosen, those in leadership, those being looked up to, those known for their spiritual strength. So what happens? You stay silent, you pray for others, encourage others, speak truth to others, and suffer in silence, because you feel like if people knew what you were really battling, they'd see you differently. You're afraid they'd lose respect, or worse, they'd label you, reduce you to your weakest moments. So you keep it hidden, and in the hidden place, the battle gets louder. It's not always a fall that takes you out. It's the silence after, the constant internal war, the sense of duality, outwardly serving God, inwardly feeling disqualified. And the more you stay quiet, the more that lie grows, the lie that says, you're the only one. You're too far gone. You should be over this by now. But those are not the words of your Father. Those are the words of fear. trying to keep you isolated and ineffective. You see, healing begins in the light, and while not everyone needs to know your struggle, someone should. You weren't created to fight alone. You weren't meant to carry shame like a secret tattoo on your soul. There is no shame in being human. There is only danger in pretending you're not. God isn't asking for your perfection. He's asking for your honesty, because the moment you break the silence, the power of that darkness begins to fade. And in your most honest places, grace floods in. Greater calling means greater pressure. Chosen ones often carry assignments that reach far beyond what others see. You may feel it in your spirit. There's something bigger you're being prepared for, something more demanding, more impactful, more eternal. But with great purpose comes great resistance, and pressure like few others ever experience. You're not just fighting for your own freedom. You're carrying the weight of what your breakthrough could release in others, and the enemy knows it. That's why your struggle with lust can feel so intense, so personal, so relentless. It's not just about today's temptation. It's about undermining tomorrow's influence. If Satan can distract you now, disqualify you emotionally, or drown you in shame, he can keep you from stepping into the fullness of your assignment. Lust is strategic. It hits hardest when you're spiritually on the verge of growth, right before promotion, right before a door opens. It doesn't wait until you're strong. It strikes when you're vulnerable, tired, discouraged, or lonely, and it whispers, "You'll never be clean enough to lead." But here's the truth. The pressure you feel isn't proof that you're losing. It's proof that you're dangerous. It means the enemy sees what's on you. It means he's trying to preempt your purpose. But what he doesn't understand is this. Pressure doesn't break chosen ones. It refines them. The fire doesn't destroy gold. It reveals it. And you, even in your private battles, are being refined. Not to be perfect, but to be real. Humble, dependent, fully surrendered. God is not waiting for you to become flawless. He's training you to become unshakable, through fire, through pressure, through every silent war. So don't interpret your struggle as a curse. It may be the evidence of your calling, and a sign that heaven is near. Sexual energy is also creative and spiritual energy. Most people view sexual desire as just a physical instinct, but for the chosen, it's much more. It's spiritual, it's sacred, it's powerful. That intensity inside you, the fire, it's not random. It was designed by God, not just for physical connection, but as fuel for your creativity, your expression, your prayer life, your spiritual authority. You were made to carry intensity, and when it's directed toward divine purpose, it becomes a force for healing, vision, and transformation. But if it's misdirected, it turns inward and starts to burn you. That's why so many chosen ones feel like their sexual urges are overwhelming, not because they're perverse, but because they carry more spiritual and emotional energy than most people. And without healthy expression, that power looks for an escape. Lust is the shortcut the enemy offers when purpose is delayed, when your gift hasn't found its full release, when your creativity is stifled, when your connection with others feels distant. Lust appears as a quick outlet. It says, "Just let this out. You need relief." But that release is fake. It feels powerful in the moment, but it drains you. It leaves you emptier. It steals the very energy you were meant to use for something eternal. God didn't give you that fire to waste it in isolation. He gave it to you to build, to create, to love, to intercede, to prophesy, to write, to move mountains. And the enemy knows it. That's why he tries to hijack the engine and steer it into a dead end. But here's the good news. You can reclaim that power. You don't have to suppress it. You can submit it. When you invite God into your passion, not to kill it, but to lead it, He refines it. He repurposes it. He channels it into something that doesn't leave you ashamed but alive. And the very fire that once threatened to destroy you becomes the light that guides others home. The world normalizes what God calls sacred. You don't have to go looking for lust. It finds you. It's in your feed, your movies, your music, your advertising, even in seemingly harmless conversations. The culture we live in has not only accepted sexual immorality, it has celebrated it, marketed it, branded it as self-love, confidence, freedom, empowerment. And when you're chosen, this constant exposure feels like a spiritual war, because your soul knows better. You were born to carry something holy, and the world's version of love and pleasure doesn't satisfy that part of you. But over time, constant exposure begins to desensitize you. What once grieved you now barely stings, And that's the danger. Lust doesn't always strike with shock. It slips in through numbness. The enemy knows he can't take your calling, but if he can dull your senses, if he can normalize what God calls sacred, if he can blur the lines just enough, he can weaken your authority. And once authority is weakened, your confidence in the Spirit fades with it. That's why chosen ones often live with this invisible tension. You know what's right, but you keep seeing the opposite everywhere. You long for purity, but the world mocks it. You fight for holiness, but it makes you feel alone. But here's the truth. Holiness isn't outdated. Purity isn't weakness. And boundaries aren't bondage. They're protection. You are not missing out by resisting the culture. You are preserving something heaven values, your spiritual clarity, your intimacy with God, your inner peace. And you're not doing it for image. You're doing it for integrity. Because you understand, not everything that feels good leads to life, and not everything the world celebrates will sustain your soul. You are set apart. That means you will be misunderstood, but you are never alone. The more you resist the counterfeit, the more space you create for the real. Because your victory brings glory to God. This battle you're in, it's not just about you. It's not just about desire, weakness, or human mistakes. There is a much bigger picture, one the enemy sees clearly, and one you need to remember. When a chosen one overcomes lust, it doesn't just bring freedom, it brings glory to God. That's the real reason why the warfare is so fierce. Because when you say no to temptation, when you walk away from secret sin, when you silence the lies and choose holiness, heaven rejoices and hell takes notice. You become a living testimony that God's power is greater than human weakness. And that kind of witness, it shakes the kingdom of darkness. Lust isn't just trying to rob you of a moment, it's trying to silence your story. Because if you rise, if you heal, if you walk in freedom, others will follow. That's what the enemy fears most. Your private victory becomes someone else's hope. Your deliverance becomes someone else's roadmap. Your purity becomes someone else's permission to believe they can be free too. And that's what makes you dangerous. Not because you've never fallen, but because you didn't stay down. Not because you're perfect, but because you know where to run. You've tasted both shame and grace, and you've chosen grace. And now your very life, scars, lessons, prayers, tears, carries the fragrance of heaven. God's glory isn't revealed through flawless people. It's revealed through surrendered ones. So don't let shame quiet your story. Don't let guilt steal your voice. Your victory is not just your own. It's part of a divine plan to show the world that God is still holy, still merciful, still victorious in the lives of real people with real struggles. You are chosen, and your freedom brings him glory.